Hey folks, welcome back. Another Poem Mass video. It's been, a few months since we did this, so I guess we'll go over these again, right? If you do want to see the previous rankings of some of these units, obviously we're going to change a few, but, the ones that we didn't change, I guess, you could check out the previous videos. They should all have links to the ones before that, if there was any other changes, etc., right? So, anyway, so yeah, again, my personal feel for videos like this, right, is that I have them categorized in like 3 different categories. Ones you got the supports, then you got the ones that actually do damage on their sinks, and then the other category we got units that maybe do something on their sink, but generally more so just wants the extra 20 out of 20 stats, right? Rather than it's not like they're massive sink nukers or whatever, right? They could, again, maybe some can do some stuff on the sink, but more so they want the 20 out of 20 stats, right? So anyways, that being said, again, I do feel like a lot of this is highly subjective, right? In terms of which units you should actually prioritize. It really depends on your account and your perspective on how, I guess, which unit would be worth EXing, right? Do you think, well, should you just EX the strongest units, right? The strongest units that have this sink nuke. Do you think EXing the strongest units is better? Or do you think EXing a unit that's maybe not that powerful, but if you EX them, obviously it makes them much more usable, right? Makes them much stronger, Do you want to go for the overkill, or do you want to go for units that are that really need the EX to actually do some stuff, right? Or do you want to just go for the strongest? So again, all that really depends on yourself, right? Again, also it depends on your account, right? Or for example, there's really good unit to EX that's maybe like a type that you already have like a bunch of. Do you want to go for that, or do you want to go for the maybe not as good unit to EX, but it feels like a type that you're missing, right? Or region that you're missing. So again, it depends on a lot of factors. There's no way for me, to tell you what's good for everyone, because everyone counts are different ways of, again, do you prefer to EX the stronger units, or do you prefer to EX the weaker units, right? Again, I'm just here to categorize these out for you, right? And then if you want to, if you are looking for, okay, which are the stronger units to EX, just look at the overall tier list for in terms of, or at least if you care what I think about, how powerful each units are, right? You can check out the overall tier list videos in terms of which units are probably stronger, which units probably, maybe not as strong, right? So, anyways, moving on. So, again, we did make some changes, right? The basic categories are still mostly there, right? You got, again, the support EXs. Support, generally, again, I am just basing them off of how good the support is individually as a support, right? Because here's the thing, I do feel like with supports, doesn't matter what else they do on their EX, a support EX is a support EX. And again, in my personal opinion, I like support EXs the most. I think they're probably the most worth EXing out of all the different, 3 different types, right? Because you could use support in anywhere, and it could be really good, right? I'm not saying that the other ones can't be great everywhere either, but generally speaking, striker EXs are much better in master mode, and then tech EXs are much better. Again, not always, right? But generally, striker EXs are better in master mode. Tech EXs are probably better in legendary gauntlet, but again, support EXs are good everywhere because they're just so powerful, right? It just gives your entire team an overall boost, right? So there's that, right? That's why personally, if you want to ask me, I would recommend EXing supports, right? Again, this is not going to be like, oh, well, I'm going to EX, some Misty then, or I'm going to EX the Holiday Erica, which is not that great of a support, over like something that's a really nice, tech EX unit to EX like Marnie, right? No, that's ridiculous. Again, it really depends on what you need, and I do think you should EX better units, right? Than not as good ones that maybe you think are maybe in a better role, right, in terms of what the EX does, right? So, yeah, I'm not saying EX all supports first before you. No, that's not what I'm saying, right? But I'd say generally, I'd say you would want to at least have a few support EXs, right? Again, they are just so powerful, so good, right? So, anyways, yeah, that being said, let's get into this a bit, right? A lot of disclaimers, because again, this is highly subjective. Also, nothing in these tiers are ranked, right, from left to right. Again, if you do want to actually see the units ranked and how strong they are, check out the tier list videos. All right, moving on. So let's first talk about some changes that we made. First of all, in terms of some changes that got moved. Obviously, the big one being some of the zones that were added. The one being bug zone, right? So now Alder actually. It used to be his nuke was honestly not worth setting up at all because it's not that good, but now it is actually pretty nice with bug zone, right? And obviously his hyper beam DPS is really nuts as well, so there is that for Alder. Who else? Again, in terms of bug zone, I guess there's also Guzma, right? You know, before that he wasn't worth like anything, but now I guess with bug zone, yeah, you could sync with him, right? You could definitely sync with him, get some some solid damage on his sync, and obviously he is in the good units that heavily rely on their sync to do damage because he heavily relies on the sync to do damage because his obviously pinwheel damage is not very good. That being said, do also keep in mind a lot of these units when you're thinking about EXing, especially the units that do have zones or terrains or stuff, right? Do also think about that zone/terrain unit if you have them, right? Because a lot of times the zone/terrain unit is going to be a stronger sync nuker than whatever, not always. There's a few, zone terrain units that don't sync that well. Like, for example, Bianca doesn't sync that powerful, but generally the zone terrain units are a lot of times the top 3 sync nukers in their respective types, right? Like, for example, again, yeah, you do have something like a Morty who mainly really, or Morty, Acerola, Fall Acerola, they mainly really only do damage on their syncs. And yeah, with the Ghost Zone, their syncs are very powerful, but they're just not as powerful as, for example, Renegade Cynthia's sync, right? And if you're running them on the same team, well, you're going to sync with Renegade Cynthia because she's just stronger, right? Also, I don't know why you'd be running them on the same team if that's the case. unless you just really like that unit and want to use them, that's fine, right? That's fine. But yeah, there's that, and also again, obviously, some units like a Nate, right? Obviously, like, yeah, he can nuke, but again, like Annie Skyla's nuke is so much better, right? Obviously, there's like some slight differences, striker nuke versus tech and physical special, etc. Whatever. But like again, generally, right? But yeah, same thing with like a Guzma, like Ingo's sync bug zone is just better. Obviously, if you don't have the zones, then yeah, that's a different conversation. But also, if you don't have the zones, these units syncs still just won't be that powerful, right? So again, do keep stuff like that in mind as well. All right, so anyways, moving on. So yeah, those are some units that got buffed with a bug zone. Same thing with Leovani over here, right? Leovani a bit harder to set up the full nuke, but you could definitely get a really powerful nuke in there, and you could, with Sun, you get some good damage on bug buzzes as well, right? It's kind of like a mini Mewtwo. I mentioned that earlier on Twitter, right? But I mean, a very high base special attack, the same BP on Bug Buzz and Psychic, both get 1.5 times zone, and then he gets a bit, he gets a bit better of a multiplier even, right? 50% multiplier in comparison to Mewtwo's 30%, right? So, yeah, Mewtwo does still hit harder on, like, all fronts, right? But still, like, his setup's kind of like a mini Mewtwo, if you think about it. Anyways, moving on. Let's see, is there any other ones that got changed? Mallow's the other one. Mallow, I mean, it's not that her DPS was bad before, it's just, it always was good. It's just, like, very freaking good now, right? Again, it does take a while to set up the sync, but even with a, non-fully set up sync, her sync still does massive damage. So that's also a nice one. As for some other ones, we did also move a few down, because again, now with all the zones, terrains running around, some of these, the bar for like a good sync nuker is a bit higher, right? So a lot of other units that used to have like sync nuke multipliers just honestly just don't hit as hard anymore in comparison to some of the other ones. Like all these guys up here, right? I'm pretty sure all these guys up here have at least 2 million syncs, except for maybe Hala. Hala's is definitely not 2 million, but Hala also does have a super effective up for himself that he sets up relatively easily, right? As long as you have them gridded up there, right? So at least he does have the super effective up next for his sync that he could bring himself that could remedy that. But yeah, most of these guys are at least 2 million. Some of these are 7-8 million. That's just slightly, that's just ridiculous, right? Numbers. And then some of these, around like 1 million are just, again, it's the gap is showing a bit, right? So we did move a few down. Again, not that these are bad units, like, for example, Emmett, right? It's just not, again, he has a sync nuke, right? It's not super hard to set up, right? Like these guys. But it also doesn't do that as much as, again, some of these other guys' nukes, right? In comparison, that happens with a lot of these rock type units. Like same thing with Hilda, same thing with Blue here as well, right? Yeah, rock type units, again, they don't have a zone. They kind of fall behind a bit in terms of damage, right? Again, they're still overall good units, right? Their overall DPS is fine, right? It's just that their nukes just is not very comparable to some of the other guys up here, right? Like, it's not very close, right, to some of them. Maybe close some, but like, again, in general, and again, they're just overall good units. If you want to give them the stats, that's fine as well, right? They're all very, very nice units. And on top of that, Hilda and Blue, they also mega upon sinking as well. Hilda gets the extra, gauge decrease, right? So, yeah, so it's in the, mostly with like the 20 out of 20 stats, but also have some use on sync, right? So, and generally powerful units, right? Which I do think all these are, right? Moving on, there's a few other ones, the fighting ones as well, right? Again, B, SE, Guzma, they have their nukes. They're not super hard to set up nukes, right? But again, generally just falls off a bit, right, in comparison to a lot of these other guys. And they're still generally good units. They still have some stuff on their sync, right, in terms of nuking wise, right? It's just again, just not, yeah, right? It is what it is. Another one, I guess, would be this Cynthia, even with Dragon Zone, right? Even with Dragon Zone. But she also does have that extra high 5 thing, which is nice for her sync. That, buffs all her stats. So that's cool. That's cool, right? But her sync's also not fantastic at this point. I guess Leon's another one, right? He does have, like, yeah, he has heavy hail, but do you really need heavy hail? Not really. Right, is he a bad nuker? No, he's not a terrible nuker. He could still do some damage on that nuke, but again, it's just generally not, yeah, it's not anything crazy, right? Not anything crazy, so, but yeah, overall, still a good unit, right? Still a very, very good unit overall. So again, if you do want the extra 20 stats at least for that you get from the EX, that's really, really nice, right? And then, again, you could still nuke, it's just not as powerful, right? Yeah, I think those are most of that, right? So there's a few other changes we have to make. Blue and Maybun over here, we're moving them up into this category, which I also added. It's the category called mostly will like the stats, but also have rather uninteresting sync moves or units who have to sync once anyways. Which obviously Blue and Lopunny are, because if they don't sync, these two units are worthless offensively, almost borderline, like, garbage, right? Again, offensively, right? So you, if you want Blue to actually do damage, gotta sync with him once to get Mega Pidgeot to get Hurricane. Same thing with Lopunny, right? If you want her to do anything, you gotta sync her into Mega Lopunny so you could high jump kick and, like, not do, like, cringe normal type damage and actually do fighting type damage there instead, right? Again, are their syncs good? No, their syncs suck, right? But if you're gonna sync with them anyways, right, might as well, right? But also, do keep in mind, I do not have them very, very high in the pecking order, right? They're not, this is not a very, very high tier. It's just, like, barely above the, literally just for the stats, right? And the reason, if you're wondering, oh, what about Mega Rayquaza or Cynthia Mega Garchomp or Mega Lucario, right? Don't they Mega too? Yeah, they do Mega, but again, the point isn't, I don't have them up here because they Mega, right? They could not be Megas for all I care, right? As long as they have the thing where they had to at least sync once to get the new moves that could actually make them useful, and these three units don't have any of that, right? The Karina doesn't get anything useful post-sync in terms of moves-wise. Cynthia doesn't get anything interesting or useful after she syncs. Same thing with Steven, right? And if you're wondering, well, what about the Mega stats? Well, first of all, Steven doesn't even get any offensive stats, all speed. And these who do get offensive stats, it's just not good, right? In comparison to syncing with an EX support, right? In almost every team you really run them in, unless, again, you really just want to use them for some reason. It's almost always better to just sync with someone else on these units teams, right? Again, most of the time being the EX support, because EX support sync just gives you much more damage for your entire team, not even for that. Like, even if you're just, ignoring the team-wide buff, right, thing that EX supports give you, even for a single unit, it still gives you more than than what they get as a singular unit. And obviously EX supports, they give it to the whole team, so there really isn't that much point really with sync with them, right? If you really want, okay, maybe the second sync, but by that time, if you're a master mode, probably the battle's probably already over, right? And these guys are obviously striker AoE sync, so there's really not that much point syncing with them. Moving on, the last one is Alicia. Nothing against Alicia, she's just not that good anymore, I guess. We put her in the stats. I guess, again, objectively, does her sync do some damage? Yeah, it does, right? It's just like, what team are you ever syncing with Alicia on? Like, same thing with like someone like Bianca, also in this tier, right? When are you ever syncing with Bianca? Right? Is Bianca's sync bad? No, it's not bad. It's actually pretty good, right? With Psychic Terrain, the innate, right? His mother is stuff that they got there. It's actually a pretty good sync. It's also not a unit you'd really ever sync with, considering all the massive psychic type sync nukers that you generally would run Bianca with, right? Again, same with some of these other units, right? Again, different units are on here for different reasons. There's a lot of reasons why we have them over here, right? Steven is someone that you sync with a lot, if you are running him. Because if you're not synced with Steven, why are you running him? There's like free ice types that are better, that do better damage than Steven, right? But yeah, it is what it is, right? And especially Alicia got especially shafted because of the Dragon Zone thing, because Lucas obviously sets Dragon Zone, but Lycia's innate requires her to be none of the field effect stuff, right? So you actually can't even use her with Lucas. So it's like, all right, what are you syncing with Alicia for? It's not like she gets anything interesting off of sync. She gets like what, Dragon Pulse, which is like, okay, so again, there's free dragon type damage that do better than Alicia. All right, so it's, yeah, and units like these, there's really no point. All right. Moving on, let's go into some of the new units. Speak of units that have no point, this guy and her, right, again. Caitlyn can maybe do some damage on her thing, but you never really use it. It's not very good. Same thing with Price. I mean, Price are straight up, garbage to a point, right? In terms of the sync wise. Yeah, there's, again, no point really EXing this guy. Yeah, at least some of these other guys, like, if you really want to force Dragonite to sync, right? It's something, right? At least these guys get megas. Like, this guy's just like, what are you doing? This guy got nothing, right? Going for him. Moving on, let's see. We got Ingo. Ingo does have a pretty powerful sync, right? Otherwise, his damage is like, you can get some damage on his quick attacks. You can get some damage on his quick attacks. It's just that he just runs out of quick attacks eventually, right? So, again, he does heavily rely on, I'd say, his sync to really do damage. Maybe in shorter stages, his DPS might not be the worst, right? If you really focus on that aspect of it, but again, eventually it's gonna dry up, right? What else? We have Suicune, obviously one of the best supports in the game. Like, she is a must. If you pull Suicune and you don't EX her, why did you even pull her in the first place? You should, like, refund. Like, you should, like, people who pulled Chris and didn't EX Chris, unless they just straight up don't have any resources. If you pulled S's Chris and you didn't EX her, DNA should, like, send people to your house, take your phone, and then take Chris back. That's a complete waste. She's one of the best units to EX in the game, straight up, right? She gets so much stuff from EXing. It's insane. First of all, she's a support EX, obviously, and then you get 1 MP back for every single MP that you've used. Nuts, right? Upon like other stuff, she's one of the best units to EX in the game, obviously. On top of just being one of those best supports, right? So moving on, we have B. Again, most of B's damage does come from his sync, as well as his max move damage, right? So he does heavily. Again, you can do some damage if you really want on, like, his Mystical Fire or Psy Beam, I guess. But again, it's generally not something that it just require a lot of setup. And even if you do fully set it up, it's still not super good, right? But also, B's dropping tomorrow, so stay tuned for that, I guess, as well on the channel. What else we got? Bertha. Bertha obviously doesn't really do too much, but she does have a very, very powerful sync, so she's definitely worth EXing, right, I'd say. If you really want to do ground type damage. As for Lucian, same thing, right? He doesn't really do too much damage on his, like, other stuff, right? Except for that one video that I did. And obviously he does have a very, very powerful sync nuke, so there's that for, Lucian. Again, with units like this, also do keep in mind, is it really worth sync with Lucian over something like an Anniversary May, who's the second terrain setter that really enables Lucian to do that much better damage, right? So, again, do also keep in mind with these units that have terrain zone, all that stuff, right? So, moving on, we got Lyra Selby. She can do very, very good damage on her Grassy Glide if you want, but most of the time, you really are just running her for her utility, right? Obviously, she has a massive, massive nuke as well. So she's going to be in this this tier of units who can do DPS, but again, a lot of times are doing some other utility stuff, or they just have like the nuke that's like just really, really, really powerful. But again, if you want them to do DPS, you can also do it, right? It's just really depends on what you're trying to use with these units, what team you're putting them on, what stages you're facing, right? Moving on, How does have a very, very powerful nuke, right? In terms of like electro type nukes, he's got like one of the better ones in the game. Like outside of like some certain situations, like it's like super effective up or whatever. With like, Hao's nuke is actually stronger than like, I think if I remember correctly, his nuke should be stronger than like Elisa's and like N's, which is pretty good, right? But downside, discharge not that powerful, right? Discharge not that powerful, so you do really want that EX if you really want him to, you know, contributing massively offensively, right? So yeah, there's that. And again, it's not like all these units down here can't do any damage. Like, you know, I mean, like Hao, Elisa, Celine, right? They can all do damage, right? It's mostly the strikers, because most of these techs actually don't really do that good DPS, right? Most of the strikers, but again, it's just like comparison, like some of the other guys up there. These aren't really that comparable, right? Moving on. We have this Erica. Again, her energy ball doesn't do that much. It's mainly her nuke, right? But again, like units like Erica, Grass Train, Celebi nukes harder, so always keep that in mind. Same thing with Chris. Again, she does have a really, really nice nuke. Her mega kick damage isn't terrible, but it's also not anything crazy either. All right, so there's that. SE Lily is just a good support overall, right? So there's that. Again, in my opinion, supports just go for the ones that are good. Go for the supports that are powerful. Go for the supports that you use the most, right? Very, very simple for supports. Again, there are certain ones that maybe have some like better, like for example, like you know, Leaf, right? Like Leaf gets the stat boost thing on her like sync or whatever, right? Which is nice and cool, but also is that really much worth EXing over a support that you use just a lot more, right? That are much more powerful, better universally, like an Ingo, right? Are you Ingo doesn't do as much as Leaf does on her sync, but are you going to EX Ingo or Leaf? You're going to EX Ingo. Ingo's much better support, right? So, moving on. What else we got? Lyra. Lyra's also obviously a very, very good support. You get Sun every time you sync with her as well, so there's also that. Again, it's not saying like every one of them. Maybe like some of the weaker ones up here, you could maybe justify EXing one of these guys instead, right? But again, it really just depends. All right, it really depends on what you need. Again, just EX the supports you use more. Ho, obviously a fantastic support to EX as well. Got the extra stat buffs if you have that grid unlocked, adrenaline as well, right? I think it's the sync thing, the damage protection, whatever it's called. That's good. Obviously, also a top tier support in general. Ethan is, I would say, in the good DPS. Obviously, you know, if you look at Ethan's DPS, if you compare it to like any of these other guys, is like, you know, DPS single target wise, obviously Ethan's damage not that good, right? But he does do good overall damage at least, right? In terms of the AOE damage again. You know, if you're looking at single target, maybe some of these are even better. But again, he also does have a very, very powerful nuke, right? Very, very powerful nuke. And again, his attack hits everyone. AoE target, right? So I wouldn't say his DPS is bad, right? Overall, it's just single target, you know. Moving on. Let's see. We got SE Sonya, which is just good on all levels, right? Good nuke, good DPS, good everything. Fantastic unit overall. Got Nidoking, same thing, right? Very, very good nuke. Very good, you know, DPS, right? All these different types got going on, cooking. Very cool. Same thing with this guy, SC Emmet, obviously. Powerful nuke, powerful DPS, good unit overall. Right, again, if you want to go in depth in terms of, you know, which ones, just wait until, you know, we get our end of the month tier list out, right? In terms of, like, where, like, again, obviously not all these units are equally powerful, right? I mean, obviously SS Serena is stronger than, like, I don't know, Berg, right? Come on. So yeah. Do you want to look at, like, which ones in terms of, like, the powerful ones? Go check out the tier list again. If you're looking for, though, the weaker ones to make them at least usable, right? Again, that's your prerogative as well. Is that the word, prerogative? Right, your decision? I don't know. ESL, sadly. But yeah, I guess that's most of them. There's only 2 units over here. Kind of sad. Probably should have split this one because it's like 3 different things in here, and there's like 12 units, and there's like 2 units where it's like 1 thing. Oh well, we'll probably change that next time. But anyways, yeah, that's me this one. I guess hope you all enjoyed, my guys. Think in the comments down below. Like, enjoy this video, subscribe to the channel for some more Pumaz content. Again, this is just a suggestion. You don't have to follow it, right? And again, heavily based on your account. Heavily based on your account, right? So yeah, I don't know everyone's account. I can't tell you exactly which one should be better, right, for each person. So that's up to you. I'm just telling you what you get out of these, and yeah, have fun, folks, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Also, do keep in mind, you know, their move levels as well, right? Look at what move levels they get their sync nukes at for the nukers.